years ago, a battle was fought and an empire was destroyed. Now, the saga will continue.
You were expecting someone else?
Some would argue that after finally seeing George Lucas's anticipated return to the Star Wars universe, the wait for Episode 2 was made a lot easier. Lucas was criticized for no longer possessing the creative juices that made his original films so successful, even though the first of the 3 prequels was a blockbuster success. But even the numbers have been debated, with doubtful cynics claiming that it was simply the hype that raked in the film's cash flow. Remember the famous Austin Powers trailer basically telling people to go see Star Wars before seeing Austin Powers?
If you see only one movie this summer, see Star Wars.
Even the Austin Powers films gloated at its critical failure, when the trailer for Goldmember recanted its original catchphrase.
If you see one movie this summer, see Austin Powers.
Whether you liked Episode 1 or despised it, there were 2 more films to go before Lucas would finally abandon the film saga for good. At the tail end of 2001, the title of this latest installment was revealed, Attack of the Clones, which was probably the one film that sounded the most like a cheesy 50s B-movie. Fans threatened to boycott the new film based on the title alone. There didn't seem to be a whole lot of excitement for the new movie. The Phantom Menace had left such a bad taste in the fans' mouths that they were looking for any reason to hate the rest of them too. I swear I never heard so much hatred about the original trilogy before the prequels came along, despite all the digital touches given to the 1997 special editions. People even started talking trash about the Ewoks. Before Phantom Menace, I knew a lot of people who thought Jedi was their favorite film in the series. But after the annoying screen presence of Jar Jar, fans decided to wash their hands of Jedi as well. It was perplexing to say the least. I guess fans just couldn't accept that there actually existed a tainted Star Wars movie. As for myself, the 3-year gap between Menace and Clones was a little more bearable, but still left an impression on me. As much as I enjoyed and oftentimes defended Episode 1, I would have favored a film that was a little closer to the original films. There was no Empire yet, no Star Destroyers, and no Imperial Stormtroopers. It was pretty hard at that time to compare Episode 1 to the originals because it was so far removed from anything we'd seen up to that point. I admit I was expecting something akin to The Empire Strikes Back, and for the second film, my expectations were slightly let down. The Phantom Menace, as fun as it was also pretty flawed. I think the biggest problem I had with it, though, was that it had a habit of explaining things and then quickly moving to a new scene. Then we'd get another explanation, and then we'd be off to a new scene. Explanation, new scene. Some dialogue, and then a new scene. I was hoping for something a little more fleshed out for the second film. We now had the characters established, so I figured it was time to delve deeper into the secrets of the Star Wars universe. At the beginning of Clones, we find out that the Republic has split. Thousands of star systems have left the Republic and have joined the Separatists, led by an idealist Jedi named Count Dooku. Ongoing Separatist threats have left the Republic to vote on the creation of a massive clone army to help them out. It's funny, but even though we've all heard about the Clone Wars from Alec Guinness in the original films, I never actually imagined that it was composed of actual clones. I don't know why. When Padme, now a senator, returns to Coruscant to vote on this army, an assassination attempt is made on her life, and Jedis Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker are commissioned to protect her. The film takes place 10 years after The Phantom Menace, and for all those years Anakin dreamed about Padme, which is kind of creepy when you stop to think about it. At first it's obvious that Padme looks down on Anakin and flat out insults him in front of his master.
And he'll always be that little boy I knew on Tatooine.
We also find out that Anakin has frightening visions concerning his mother on Tatooine. I always enjoyed this scene with Obi-Wan counseling Anakin. It also makes sly references to the past films.
Why do I get the feeling you're going to be the death of me?
And the relationship is one of the stronger points of these movies. During yet another assassination attempt, our heroes are led on a fast-paced speeder chase through the skies of Coruscant. Watching this on DVD, it's really nothing special and goes on for a bit too long, but in the theaters I remember thinking it was quite a spectacle, giving the pod race scene in The Phantom Menace a run for its money. The thing I didn't quite get was that a bounty hunter actually commissioned another bounty hunter to kill Padme. Jango Fett, who we learn later is Boba Fett's father, sends Zam Wesell to kill Padme, which makes no sense. Why doesn't Jango just go kill her? After a confrontation with Zam, Jango leaves behind a clue that has Obi-Wan seeking out his friend Dex at Dex's diner. Again, I love this scene because it's reminiscent of one of Lucas's earlier films, American Graffiti, with a 60s style diner. Once Kenobi discovers that his bounty hunter is on the hidden planet Kamino, he goes to investigate while Anakin is charged with protecting Padme on her home planet of Naboo. There's some subtle romantic scenes between Padme and the aspiring Jedi Knight, and some bickering as well.
I'm in charge of security here, milady.
But the biggest fault of this movie is the actual love story between these two characters. The first time Anakin reveals his feelings to Padme, I was afraid to laugh.
Here everything is soft and smooth.
I just couldn't believe the dialogue could have been so corny. And the worst part about it is, Padme seems genuinely uninterested in Anakin's continuous advances. He comes across as a socially awkward high school kid showing off his new car to the popular girl, but not having a lot of charisma to back it all up with. I have to agree with a lot of the fans here that the love story felt contrived. When Padme finally tells Anakin that she loves him, it comes across as empty, because she never once let on that she harbored the same emotions for him. She was always pushing him away, sending him a clear message that she wasn't interested. The chemistry between them was pretty shaky, and despite their forbidden marriage, it's always been hard for me to accept their relationship as anything but forced. And what's worse is that they end up becoming parents to Luke and Leia, so you would expect something a little stronger than what actually came across on screen. The one scene I've always loved and I'll always defend is when Anakin goes on a Tusken Raider killing spree and admits to Padme what he's done.
I killed them all. They're dead. Every single one of them. And not just the men, but the women. And the children, too. They're like animals, and I slaughtered them like animals. I hate them!
I love the performance Hayden Christensen gives here. It's short-lived, but a standout scene for me. Then there's all the stuff on Kamino, which I simply loved. Aside from seeing a brand new planet, I'll always remember the first time we were shown the clone army. It's such a powerful scene. The asteroid field, which mirrors the scene from Empire, is also a highlight. I love those bombs Jango leaves behind when they don't make any sound at first, and then finally erupt into a nuclear space explosion. Simply awesome. And then we have the very first clone battle on Geonosis. This scene is the reason we waded through some pretty laughable romantic dialogue. Yeah, it borrows from a lot of movies that take place in coliseums, but it has its own unique Star Wars twist, and it has a little emotional resonance, too. Padme actually gets clawed by one of the monsters, and Samuel L. Jackson probably has the best line in the whole movie.
This party's over.
And then of course you have the epic lightsaber duel between Yoda and Count Dooku. I remember in high school wondering if we would ever get to see Yoda wield a lightsaber. I think most people just thought that if he were to ever be involved in a fight, he would possess some kind of force lightning like the Emperor in Return of the Jedi. I remember the crowd simply going nuts when Yoda whipped out his lightsaber. Seeing him flipping around in the air like that, while a little unexpected and somewhat silly, was still a real crowd pleaser. For me, the movie ends there. We eventually find out who the culprit is that hired Jango for the creation of the clone army, and we see Anakin and Padme get married in secret. Aside from a broken love story and some jumpy story progression, this was a much better film than Phantom Menace. It's still not quite on par with the original trilogy, but it really tried, and again the action sequences were all done to near perfection. Don't get me wrong, it carries over a lot of the flaws that were in Menace. The actors were still coming into their own. I thought Natalie Portman was pretty stale. There were some unnecessary politics, and again the romantic dialogue just didn't work. But this was a film where the pros definitely outweighed the cons. To this day I'm surprised that there are actually people who think this is a worse movie than Phantom Menace. It's not perfect, and it didn't necessarily meet my expectations, but it went to a few dark places that the originals hadn't quite gone to yet. We got to see the beginnings of the Clone Wars, and we even saw a little part of Vader surface. There was seldom a dull moment. The one thing I will say is that it runs a little long, and that could almost be forgivable had it not been for the two-dimensional love scenes. There's not much more I can say, aside from that it's a good movie and a pretty good improvement over The Phantom Menace.
I've got a bad feeling about this.